Thanks for having me. So yeah, my name's Marco Papis. By way of background, I'm uh, technically like a rocket engineer, I guess. I've worked I've worked on engines for cars in my career, and then also did like satellite testing for companies that subcontract for like NASA and stuff. Uh, but currently, have I guess I'm the founder, co-founder technically of Transient Labs. If you don't know what Transient Labs is, it's I guess we're a platform. I guess what we're calling ourselves now. We started off in a very agency model where we would just do projects with people. That's actually Ben and myself are the co-founders, and we just kind of bootstrapped ourselves for like the first year. But now we've kind of gone a lot bigger. We've raised a round of fundraising and are building a platform to really, I guess, productize innovation, if that makes sense. It's like smart contracts isn't like the core product, or dynamic art isn't the core product. It's really innovation, and so that includes smart contracts and uh, dynamic art and a lot of other ideas that we have. Um, yeah, so that's kind of like the main intro. I'm happy to go into more details on how I got into the crypto space, or what I like to call just crypto art, rather than I guess Web3 or anything like that. I guess is that typically the intros people do, or something else I should talk about? I guess yeah. Um, we can just jump into questions if that works. I don't really have much else prepared in terms of background.
Yeah, usually they take a bit of a time to show up, but if there's any work that you'd like to show as well, just in case people don't
Sure.
know, like kind
Yeah.
of what Transient
Oh
Labs.
yeah.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah. Definitely can. That's a good idea. Let me just pull this up here. Uh, I guess if people haven't seen kind of what's going around, at least my sphere, since Marfa is beef broth goes. I don't know if people have seen that collection. Um, but basically, we worked with guy with the most likes to help create this AI art collection. And so if you're curious on why there's like a decent amount of traffic going on, or you've seen these meat paintings uh, up, Pindar actually gave a really good tweet thread about what he thought was really cool about it. But Transient Labs in this case, we kind of took like this is our like kind of services arm, where we'll work with artists to do something really innovative and creative, whether it's just helping come up with the idea, or helping actually generate the AI model for these pieces. So that's kind of a good example of what I would, I guess, say is like a more straightforward like collaboration in a way. But I'll drop in a link for state of the art. Uh, da, da, da. So this was a project that we dropped last Sep November. Yeah, right before Art Basel last year, Art Basel Miami. Basically, Think UX created four, basically 15-foot by 12-foot canvases. He's a physical artist, so he painted them. And they're massive. I saw them in person. They're absolutely huge. What we did is we broke each painting up into 400 tiles each, so 1,600 total unique digital artworks, and we sold those. But then the fun part was, after about a month or so of trading, we opened up a merge window, which allowed people to merge tiles together in like sets of two, sets of four. Somebody actually merged 32 of them. Like they bought, because so the main was randomized, so you didn't get pieces next to each other. So you actually ended up having to trade for like a grouping. And so we merged those, which effectively burned the individual tiles and minted one new tile, which is really interesting from a smart contract perspective. That was really fun for me to write. just the mechanics of that. And then on top of that, we ended up actually cutting up the canvases according to all the tiles, which was kind of crazy. So yeah, that's a really good example of like a pretty in-depth project that we did, and it was really fun to work on. And so that's a good example there. And then I'm trying to think. I can probably share my screen and showcase the lab a little bit. But I'll drop some like Twitter links into just some of the like core tech that we've written about, that's in our platform right now. And happy to, maybe I probably can't send any pictures in the chat, but yeah, right now our what we're calling the lab is our flagship product where people can actually log in. And right now it's all about contract creation and minting, with some really unique features, but there's a lot more coming. And so I'm happy to get into that as well. I see some people typing, so if there's questions, I'll pause for that. How do you choose artists to work with? Yeah, a lot of the time we get kind of just pitched ideas, I suppose. So, if you're interested in working with us, we have, I believe, an email form for that on our website. If not, you can DM the Transient Labs Twitter account, but that'll get you in contact with Daniel and David on the business development side of the business. And I believe we actually have an email capture. Let me see if I can find it. So it just has like a mini form to fill out, and yeah, perfect. All right, submit a proposal. It looks like this is the link for kind of talking with us. And typically it's you'll kind of pitch what you're thinking, but the process is, we have like kind of our own innovation engineering process that we run through with people. And so we'll actually kind of more like riff or kind of morph the original, like the concept that you pitch us, and give honest feedback on what we think, and kind of based on our experience what would work and what wouldn't, that type of stuff. Can you tell us more about the features in smart contracts that Transient Labs provides, and if these features can be stacked together in one contract, if that makes sense? Yeah, so currently what's in the lab, we have our core 721 and our core ERC 1155. If anybody doesn't know the difference between the two, basically a 721 is more for like a single owner for a single NFT, whereas an 1155, there can be multiple owners for the same NFT. So it's kind of purely non-fungible versus semi-fungible is how I'd say it. Like addition versus one of one is a little bit more not as technical, I guess. Yeah, so our 721 is stacked with a bunch of features out of the box, and same with the 1155, but there's some common features that I can go into. So all of our contracts are creator sovereign. All future contracts that we add to the lab will be creator sovereign. So that means that you're the owner of it, you deploy it, you have like, Transient Labs has no hooks in there that we can, control anything. And then we have built-in royalties and royalty guard. So we have like the on-chain royalty configuration. And then we also have like what we call a block list or royalty guard to block marketplaces. So like I think the core or the default one that we provide for you, if you want to choose it, you can also choose to not have a block list at all. But we block Blur, OX, Looks Rare, basically the non-royalty paying marketplaces. Right now we've kept OpenSea unblocked because they are truly trying to make strides in terms of like helping protect creator royalties to some degree. I don't know. It's hard when that's like the majority of trading on secondary happens on OpenSea versus other platforms. But and then a big one that we're going to highlight in our next sprint is called story inscriptions. So this feature came from a project that we did with an artist, Michelle Vilhoen. Sorry if I mispronounced that last name. South African photographer, but she wanted to add additional storytelling with the blockchain. And so that's a lot of what I spend my time thinking about is how do we use the blockchain for more than just a vehicle for NFTs? Like how can we use it as part of the art? And there's a lot of people who think about that, and there's some really cool projects from like Divergent, OXG. A lot of people out there doing really interesting things. But story inscriptions basically allows you to mint an NFT as you normally would, and then allows the creator and the collector to leave text-based stories or inscriptions on the blockchain that's attributable to that NFT. So like, the creator can add any background kind of text of like what they were listening to, like what music you were listening to when you created a piece. So the collector can on chain forever immutably say why they like the piece. So that becomes really interesting. And so, yeah, in addition, there's a bunch of different features that thread goes into for the 721. But right now, like, I guess to answer your second question, the features are all kind of in one contract. We don't dynamically like put together a contract in like the backend when we compile a contract. It's all built in, and then you can choose to turn stuff on and off as you see fit, if that makes sense. So, I'm sorry, I felt like I rambled there for a while, so I'll jump to the next question. How would you suggest NFT artists define their audience, and how would you suggest the shift from physical to digital art? Yeah, finding audience. That's always been the struggle, right? um, I think a big part of it is just being yourself, not trying to, copy what others are doing. I think, I think taking inspiration from what others are doing is always valuable and flattering to those people. But like blatantly copying obviously is annoying. So whether that's like a photographer that you really admire rather than like comp stomping, you could just take inspiration from their compositions or same with gen art, stuff like that. But yeah, I think like I'm maybe not the best to answer how to find an audience. I can just give some tips on like what I've seen work. So like unique voices tend to have a lot of power. I look at that with the most likes being super unique, Patrick Amadon having a unique voice, X copy. And then also like what the subject matter is tends to have different audience sizes. So Ben, my co-founder, started off as a landscape photographer, and we were very fortunate that in the early days of Transient Labs, landscape photography, still has a big hold in the space, but was really at its peak probably when we started. And we've noticed that there has been somewhat of a, I guess, I don't know if it's a decline in collection, but or maybe it's just the fact that Ben has gotten tired of it. And so I'm kind of seeing this through his eyes, but he's shifted to new and interesting ideas that he didn't know if they would work, but he started photographing these like complex pendulums with like long exposure photography in the dark. And like, I guess it's a good example of he just thought this was really interesting and wanted to tell the story and didn't have any plans to mint this. But ultimately he through his storytelling, people who followed him on Twitter really started to vibe with what he was producing. And so now I don't think he's taken a landscape like photo in a few years, or not a few years. That's time moves a lot faster than I think it does. In like 6 months, probably he hasn't taken a landscape photo. So, yeah. Sorry if that's not super helpful on how you find an audience, but the shift from physical to digital, I guess if you're traditionally like a physical artist and maybe painter. I don't know if you have to switch to digital. I think you can still make physical art and um, either take like high fidelity scans of it to digitize. I know a lot of collectors do appreciate getting a physical. If they like buy the NFT, they can get the physical. Um, and yeah, I think I don't know if like there necessarily has to be a shift other than perhaps taking high quality scans that justify not justify what's the word I'm looking for? Anyways, that really emphasizes the art and doesn't diminish it as an NFT. And then you can always give the physical away if you want to, because there's a lot of people who still like physical art. I was researching about multi-sig contracts as a way to make it work like a membership to an on-chain library of anything. Please expand on this topic. How does that work? Yeah, so multi-sig contracts like Safe, or like I think it used to be called Gnosis Safe. That's typically what I use. It's basically a smart contract wallet where you have to have a certain number of people sign off on a transaction. So it's really good for security, especially if you hold high value NFTs or a good amount of money in there. So I've seen some people kind of make it work like a membership in a way. Typically, as the controlling member, you'd have to have some some way to keep people out of the membership, most likely, unless you custom code on top of the contract. But I haven't tried adding any plugins to these multi-sig contracts myself, so not sure exactly how you can make it work like a membership. But in general, like on-chain subscriptions are quite difficult. So it's actually the whole point of decentralization in Web3 is to make it more difficult. When you do a credit card subscription, you're basically authorizing your bank to, or somebody else to pull money out from the bank on your behalf in a recurring interval. And you can do this because banks are a centralized entity. They technically control your money. You don't. Whereas with cryptocurrency on Ethereum, especially, I can't pull ETH out of your wallet. If I could, be a lot richer. um, but so that's what makes it hard for a automated subscription. But you can create smart contracts that allow people to um, pay for access. Basically, I know there's been some EIPs, Ethereum improvement proposals about this idea of like a NFT that you have to always like keep paying for on a monthly or 6 month basis. And so that's really interesting. I've also seen some thought put in, or some not thought put in, but actual experiments with ERC20s and approvals. But there's all these edge cases that make it a lot tougher, and that's why I don't think we see on-chain subscriptions, and rather like you see more like high value passes, or something like proof pass where it's valid for 3 years. Yeah, a few of us on the residency have been talking about the idea of physical digital fashion experiences from a blockchain engineering perspective. When it comes to fashion, what do you think is exciting about merging the real and the virtual worlds of something like fashion, which is more everyday compared to say digital art? Yeah, so I guess what's really interesting is actually, so last week we did what's called Transient Labs Ghost Week, where we basically went underground for the entire week. We didn't talk much to the world. We instead did like a really dedicated hackathon with like clear goals and 3 different projects that we were working on. And so more details will come out about this, but one of the things we worked on, I guess you guys all have some insight, is called Trace. It's basically tokenized records for we say digital art certification and evolution, but fashion is art in my opinion. Um, just maybe not in the same way that most people look at a painting, right? So what's really interesting though is that you can have a physical but backed by blockchain for provenance, and so it's not like somebody would buy the digital experience necessarily with this, but they would buy, you know, maybe the clothing is backed by blockchain tech, and you have provenance and where it was shown or when it was made. So that's really interesting from a physical fashion experience perspective, I think. In addition, I think, almost like POAPs, but not on the POAP or the Gnosis blockchain. Like proof of attendance or something to remember a fashion experience by would be really interesting. And then let me pull up one other thing that I've always thought should be applied to fashion. Uh, Let me see if I can find it real quick. We did this project with a photographer called Jeremy Cowart. He has I guess he has a process that he calls the litograph, which basically takes a bunch of photos at different angles in different lighting. But let's see here, I'll do this one. But basically, what happens is once this loads, depending on your internet connection, if you hover your mouse over it, you'll see the lighting change. And so this, I think, becomes really interesting in fashion or online shopping experiences. And this is a good example of dynamic art that we coded up all the tech behind this. Um, but for an online shopping experience in the fashion world, you want to see how things fit based on different lighting. And so, um, yeah, that is a really uh, interesting thing for fashion, I'd say. And then I guess in terms of merging the real and virtual worlds, yeah, I feel like I wrote actually a blog post about this yesterday. In real life stuff enhances digital art or digital experiences in general. And I think you could also justify the opposite. I think we've found that there's ways to enhance um, both aspects, digital and physical, uh, with blockchain and just the tech that we see nowadays. So it'd be really fun if, let's say, I wasn't able to attend the fashion show, but I could go into a monaverse that was basically like replicating. If nobody knows what Mona is, I can send a monaverse. They're like hyper realistic virtual worlds. Really cool. Justin, their CEO, is a really cool dude too, and they're doing a bunch of sweet stuff. But like, if you go into some of the example worlds they have, they're really insane. And so I think it'd be interesting from a digital experience to add on is like as somebody's walking down the runway, it's like replicated in one of these worlds. I think it would be really cool. Because not everybody can fly to NYC or Milan or wherever all the shows take place, right? So, um, but if you're a fan, you want to see something. So I think Mona would be, yeah, quite interesting. As opposed to like just watching it on TV. So yeah. Any other questions I can answer? Otherwise, I can talk about a lot of nerdy stuff. Let me pull up something fun that Ben and I did with Transient Labs contracts. See if I can find it here. Oh man, I've got to go deep into the Twitter archives. Hold on. This is a cool use case of a feature of our 721 contracts called Synergy. So in case y'all didn't know, if you go to a lot of, I don't know where most of people mint, but if you go mint on Zora or on Manifold or I don't know, a lot of smart contract places, like you as the artist, as the creator, you can change the metadata whenever you want. So you could, uh, essentially just flip a switch and change, just change what the picture looks like. And a lot of times this can be useful, but that is placing a lot of trust between the collector and the creator. And by no means am I saying any of you would do this, but theoretically, um, yeah, you could see here. I'll just show the collection of this, but you could change it on people. And so we've come up with this feature in our 721 contracts called Synergy, which basically allows a creator to propose a metadata update because there are times where it's needed. Let's say you got something wrong in the description after, and you just noticed after it was sold. Like you want to be able to, change that for your collector, but rather than giving complete control, what we do is we force the collector to either accept or reject this on chain. And that way they have control because maybe they don't care about the, I don't know, typo in the description or something like that, or they just like the original image, and or it actually could even work the other way around, is they could request an update. Actually, I should show that too. Dave Krugman. We did a project with Dave using this feature called Roles, where he minted basically a blank picture, 6 of them, I think. Forget exactly how many. Oh, 10. That are basically blank. And then what we'll do is, as he finishes his project and takes the photos and develops the photos, he'll actually propose the metadata update, and the collector will be able to approve the artwork, or they could be like, oh, like I'd love if it was something like this. So this actually gives a really cool opportunity for the artist and collector to work together. And so Ben and Dave have both used the Synergy tech quite a bit. So like Ben's, everybody was originally, if you look at the Twitter thread from Ben's, if you scroll kind of far down, you'll see that every single one minted was actually a dynamic art piece to start. And then as people solved it, they were able to accept metadata updates and get the unique colors that you see in that first 3x3 grid. So that was a really cool use case. And I think there's actually one that's unsolved. Let me see if I can find that one. And so you could play around with it and see the dynamic art. Let's see here. Yeah, Tempest number 11 is unsolved. And so if you click on the piece, you can play around with it. Okay. Where did I go? Hold on, sorry. How do I get back into this? I somehow got myself out of the chat. Oh, there I am. Okay, thanks. Okay, there's the 11th one that hasn't been solved yet, so you can go play around with it. Pretty fun. So yeah, that's Synergy kind of in a nutshell. We've had really good feedback from creators and collectors alike on the importance of protecting metadata. It's only a matter of time before you know a bad actor comes and manipulates metadata for like an exposed private key on people. So we're really looking to protect the collector and creator sovereignty with this feature. Have you guys worked with any emerging fashion brands to develop their first smart contracts and NFT collections? What does that process typically look like? How does the lab integrate into this? Yeah, we haven't worked with any fashion brands that I'm aware of. But we are talking with bigger brands on strategy for smart contracts and stuff like that. And so the process typically involves figuring out what they want to do and then seeing if the lab integrates well, which I do like. Basically, the goal of the lab is to always build on top of it uh, as much as we can, and then anything custom we obviously add on top. But what's interesting for brands is like the lab as a product isn't necessarily geared towards brands, but could be used. So it's a matter of skinning it right for the right use case. But yeah, our core kind of audience that we're really targeting is creators rather than brands. So like MoonPay has a product called Hypermint that is a brand geared like a minting platform, I suppose. But it's very much geared towards brands instead of creators, and we're very much focused on the creators because I got brought into NFTs because it kind of clicked that you can have like true digital ownership. There's this new like standard for composable digital art objects. That's the NFT standards, and I just saw a lot of use case for like the creator economy, and so that's why we've stuck with creators rather than trying to transition to doing stuff only for brands. Yeah. Anything else? Otherwise, I can talk a bit about what's upcoming. So in some of the next sprints that we're doing, so say in about 3 weeks or so, we're gonna debut a contract in the lab. We've already debuted it before. We actually did this project with Patrick Amadon called Doppelganger, but we're releasing the Doppelganger contract for all to use. And so this is a good tweet thread. Basically, Doppelganger is kind of um, another twist on an edition in a way. I look at it more as like a artist subscription token, not in the same way as like a classic credit card subscription, but rather you buy a piece with the idea that an artist keeps adding to it. So what you can do is all the collectors of a doppelganger token can basically change their metadata to like this shared uh, array. And so if that's that's a bit technical, but basically what it allows you to do is there's, let's say, 10 options for what the token could look like. Everybody has access to display those same 10 options. And so you get this really interesting spread of variety. So let me see if I can find yeah, here it is. This is the collection as is. And so you can see that not all of them are showing the same metadata. There's a lot that are, because some people just prefer certain ones. But the fact is that the collectors have the ability to change their metadata, which is really cool. And then another really good example of that is called the cameras that we did with OXTGB. This is a twist on Doppelganger called Collector's Choice. Basically allows people to change their metadata up until a certain time, and then after that it's locked in. So it's almost like a community-based rarity. So in this collection there's only 70 tokens, and there were I think like 126 options to choose from as a collector. And let me see if I can find the tweet from him. It was a really interesting variety. Like he actually got, I think, all 69 out of 70 people to actually interact and change their metadata, which is absolutely insane in terms of um, what's the word, interaction, I suppose, from collectors. A lot of times people buy stuff and then just vault it, right? Um, so that was really cool to see. And so maybe I can find the stats, but there's only like um, a few that have the same metadata. Like a lot of them are like one of one pieces of art now. And so that was a really fun smart contract mechanic that allows you to do a bunch of really creative things. We're also doing like a music doppelganger, as we call it internally, but basically an album as like a collection, and everybody just can like change their NFT to the song that they like the most, which is really cool. I can't find the Twitter thread from like CGB tweets a lot. But anyways, it's really cool to see the diversity in the cameras when they all started out as the same picture. So yeah, I'm really excited to get that contract out. That and Collector's Choice, which is just another variety of doppelganger out there. See what people do with it. That's honestly some of the most fun with the lab is just being able to see what all you creative people do with the tech that we put out there. And so we've seen things used in ways that we wouldn't have really ever imagined. And that's part of the fun. So if anybody is interested, let's see here. Anybody's interested in getting access to the beta, currently we're in a closed alpha, and we're going to start opening up our closed beta here soon. But that means a lot more onboarding, and so if anybody's interested, you can go enter your email here, and probably within the next few weeks to a month, you'll start getting emails to join, and then we'll probably be in closed beta through the rest of the year, slow like controlling the user growth rate while also pushing out a lot of features, and then and then it'll start to open up even more and be an open platform in the future. But if you want early access, feel free to check out that link. Here we got a question coming. Oh, uh, Packs on chain performance. The haters when he sends tokens to people and then they couldn't sell it, and then all the tokens were burned. How does that work? Um, yeah, I haven't actually looked at that one too closely, to be honest. But if I had to theorize, it's pretty easy to block the sales ability and kind of soulbound tokens, and then most likely when all the tokens were burned, they probably had some special hook in there that allowed them to burn it, which is interesting. Or people burned it themselves. I'd have to look. If you have um, I can try and find out an OpenSea, but if you have the link to the contract, I'd be happy to take a quick look at how they did that. But yeah, I haven't actually seen that too much. But I do like Pack or POC art a lot. Like the merge was a really interesting project where it was basically an on-chain SVG that as you kind of merge tokens together, the SVG circle. It was literally just like a black and white circle would would grow in size, and so that was really fun to see how people would consume, basically. Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I wonder if I can find his website. But now I'm curious. Oh yeah, so it looks like there's actually a Crypto Times wrote about it. Basically, he gifted 30 haters uh, non-transferable um, NFTs, and he was the only one that could sell, transfer, burn the tokens. So it was like a super custom contract. But yeah, that's so he sent them and then burned them, which is pretty funny. Aside from signing up to work with you or with your no code tech, any advice on how to meet engineers, builders to team up with at a similar stage for us to experiment and explore? Um, yeah, I guess I don't know what stage you're at, but like I've just kind of cold DM'd people before of like being like, hey, like you look like you're doing something cool. I had a similar idea. Would you want to team up? And so like I have an EIP out there for multi metadata tokens. It's basically like doppelganger, but per token rather than per collection. But I was working on it and somebody else was also working on it. And he actually DM'd the Transient Labs account. And from there, we just jointly put together an EIP, but we could have just as easily kind of experimented with some tech and coded that stuff up. Yeah, it's just it's a matter of finding like the right people. So like you can join some discords. Like there's actually like I'm in Colorado, so there's like a local Colorado crypto Discord. That's pretty fun, and like I've met some people there and done some like hackathons. Um, Similarly, like I'm in some like whatever Ethereum Python community. I don't know. Usually Discord seemed like a decently good way to link up with people. Even like the marketplace discords, like I don't know, super rare, like OpenSea. There's always people um, doing really cool things or asking about really interesting things. So that's probably my advice. I haven't been the best at finding people to work with and just like randomly, but I've done a bit. Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, I'm in Denver, so just like half an hour from Micah. Um, yeah, it's actually funny. Ben and I are both in Colorado. I mean, we were both born here and stuff like that. So should link up sometime. I was like meeting up with people from crypto stuff because there's actually a lot more in Colorado than I would have ever thought. Um, but if you want to stay anonymous, that's fine too. um, yeah. I guess any other questions? It can be about anything, really. Oh yeah, sure. So the story of how Ben and I met, we actually met back in 2013. So we've been best friends for 10 years. But it was freshman year of college. It was actually technically Ben's second freshman year of college. He did his second degree in mechanical engineering, and is my only degree in mechanical engineering. Um, but we just randomly met and like instantly hit it off as friends and lived together through college, took all the same classes, that type of stuff. And then after college, he went and did his master's degree, and I went and worked for Honda R&D, doing engine research. And then after I got tired of doing that, testing cars, Ben was working at an aerospace company, and there was an opening for a test engineer position. So I applied and got it, and so it was fun because Ben and I got to work together for a year. And during that year, I guess technically when I started, Ben had come back from paternity leave, and I just remember being like, "Yo, what's up?" And he was like, "Yo, I found out about this thing called NFTs during paternity leave," and I was like, "Oh, what's that?" And then of course the first thing he shows me is the Bored Ape that he bought for some like low amount back then, um, or what I thought was a lot of money, but turns out wasn't, like insane compared to where they went. But I was like, okay, like cartoon monkeys, that's interesting, and I just kind of left it at that for a bit. And then Ben started selling his photography. He's like, you should really like. So I have a background in coding. I always did software during college and with uh, mechanical engineering. Um, but yeah, he eventually convinced me to really look at smart contracts some more, especially like the NFT standards. And it just kind of clicked. Um, and so, this was about 6 months into working together. So every lunch we spent just ideating on like what could we do. We had like essentially the early vision of the lab back 2 years ago in that summer, which is kind of crazy. Um, but we didn't know how to build it. So very much just started doing projects with his art and turned into a consulting gig. And then by February of last year, yeah, 2022, I think on my 1 year anniversary at the company, I ended up quitting because I was like, I want to go do this full time. And so that's how Transient Labs started. Um, could you share more about how do you think about NFT marketplaces? There's so many for artists to choose from. Yeah, I suppose it's a bit uh, as an artist, you can really only choose where your art sells on primary for the most part. Secondary is a lot harder because there's so many marketplaces, and I do believe that collectors should have the choice of where to sell, and hopefully they choose to sell it somewhere that adheres to royalties. I think as an artist, you have to be quite selective in a marketplace, not because they're bad, but you just need to make sure that you're getting like each marketplace has a fee, and for a good reason. They have to pay the bills. This is Web3 decentralization doesn't mean free, so yeah. Anyways, they all charge fees, so you just have to make sure that you're kind of getting what you like think you deserve out of that fee. So if it's super rare or Maker's Place, I think they charge 15%. It's like, okay, that's on the higher side, but if you're getting marketing and other stuff out of it, it might be justified. Foundation has 5% as their fee, and so maybe you don't need as much marketing on that, but you're part of a world, and so Yeah, I think it's just a matter of kind of weighing those pros and cons. Um, and so Transient Labs, in the later this year, we'll be debuting our sort of auction house and um, giving everybody a way through the lab to have, yeah, a place to sell one of ones or stacks contracts, which are like mint contracts for like additions or stuff like that. We'll have that all automated and with like what we think are appropriate fees. And so even for that, I'd say, make sure that the fee is justified and that you're getting what you want out of it. That's the main thing. And a lot of these marketplaces have different discoverability features and stuff like that too. So that might be uh, something that goes into that decision. And then how do you envision the blockchain's future as in our daily lives? Do you think that adoption will be soon or ever be? The way I look at blockchain and Web3 is that it's a new foundational instrument in the internet. We have these compose like if you think about like a Twitter post and an Instagram post are not really like composable. You can't like they could both be represented by an NFT actually, but the fact that they're centralized means that it's really hard to like showcase that on a different website. Whereas an NFT, I mean, we see all these marketplaces and like gallery.so showcasing art because there's a standard for how to showcase it in different styles, which is really cool. So I do think that blockchain is here to stay. Whether it's layer one or layer two on Ethereum, most likely mass adoption comes at the layer two level. Um, and I don't know how soon mass adoption will really have. Um, there's still a lot of questions about like how you reduce friction with like a wallet and a seed phrase, right? Um, without like it's how you reduce friction without actually like compromising the benefits that decentralization is supposed to. Smart contracts only able to be done on ETH, or can these kind of concepts be applied to other currencies like Solana or Tezos? So currently we only work on like the Ethereum EVM stack. Um, I think these concepts could very well be applied in other blockchains. It somewhat depends on, I don't think Solana has like the same feature set as Ethereum, so it becomes a little bit challenging because like stuff like story inscriptions would have to be organized a little bit differently or stored a little bit differently. And then similar with Tezos, they all just have a little bit different of like a programming language for smart contracts that and like design architecture of the actual blockchain that can somewhat affect how these concepts are applied. But I believe the concepts would be able to be applied. It's just a matter of how you code it up. Um, that said, I do think we're seeing Solidity and the Ethereum ecosystem becoming like the major player. And so like Solana is already working on like some EVM compatible or like Solidity compatible structures. And so I have a feeling that we're going to see, the ability to deploy smart contracts to these chains that are basically the same as the ones on ETH in the future. I just don't know how long that'll be. And in Tezos, I haven't heard anything about them trying to apply Solidity smart contracts there. Any thoughts on ICP as a technology? Can you remind me what ICP stands for? I suck at acronyms. Ah, um, I'm probably not like like intercomputer protocol. Is that what ICP is? I guess I'm not super familiar with it, honestly. So I feel like I'd be just lying if I said anything about it. Um, oh, it's another chain. Okay. Yeah, sorry. I don't really know actually anything about that chain. I've kept I've, I keep my eyes out when I can, but a lot of the time just focus on kind of what's in front of me. It's a it's hard to balance that, but I know we're running up to the hour mark. Yeah. Um, so I actually have another meeting to get to. Um, but really appreciate everybody listening in and asking some awesome questions. You feel free to DM me on Twitter. It's just mpafis is my Twitter handle. If you have any more questions, happy to answer them as I get the time. So
Fantastic. I'll include your Twitter and any other social media that you've shared with us in the ping after the class as well. Do we have any more
awesome.
questions that anyone wants to end with? Um, if not, we can absolutely end it here. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with the class. It was
Oh yeah,
fantastic.
thanks for having me on. It really was fun.
Thank you very much. And for everyone else, we're going to have our um, open mic in 1 hour. So please come and tune in on Twitter soon. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you,
Bye.
Marcus.